So imagine you're looking at a military academy's admissions data,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you realize that almost 20% of the recruits are just systematically killed before they even get to like their first actual training exercise.
Which is an insane statistic.
Right. And we aren't talking about combat casualties here. We're talking about an institution where the architecture itself is like explicitly designed to be lethal. It's basically an automated meat grinder for anyone who doesn't meet a very specific, ruthless physical standard.
Yeah, it completely inverts the standard educational model. Like, you don't arrive at Basgiath War College to be built up into a soldier.
Yeah.
The institution just assumes you are already a weapon, and its entire onboarding process is basically just a stress test to see at what pressure you snap.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping right into the source material surrounding Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and we're focusing specifically on this elite dragon-riding military academy in the Kingdom of Navarre.
It is a brutal world.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is for you, the learner, to really explore this fascinating problem. Like, how does someone who is inherently physically disadvantaged outmaneuver a system that is meticulously engineered to kill them?
Right. How do you beat a rigged game?
Yes.
Yes.
We're looking at how intellect and strategic adaptability can just completely dismantle a system built entirely on brute strength.
And to really get to the bottom of that, we have to look closely at our protagonist, 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail.
Oh, Violet.
Right. Given her background, I mean, she spent her whole life training for the scribe quadrant. She was essentially preparing to be an archivist and a historian surrounded by books. So throwing her into the writer's quadrant is this profound mismatch of environment and subject.
Because she has some very unique physical traits.
Yeah, she has a silver-tipped hair, but more importantly, her joints literally dislocate under pressure. Her ligaments are incredibly fragile.
And despite all that, her mother, who just happens to be the commanding general, forces her into this deadly environment anyway, against her will.
Exactly. Which brings us right to the literal front door of Basgiath, or, well, more accurately, the parapet.
Oh, the parapet. Just reading about it stresses me out.
Yeah.
For anyone stepping into this world, the parapet is the ultimate filter.
It really is.
It's this 200-foot-high, incredibly narrow stone bridge over a fatal drop. And of course, it's usually slick with rain. Because why not?
It's conscription day, so the weather is terrible.
Right. And the brutal reality is that 67 candidates died just trying to cross it, including a candidate named Dylan right off the bat. The psychological warfare of making people cross this just to enlist is staggering.
Yeah, it really sets the tone.
It feels like this ultimate twisted kind of glass cliff scenario where you are set up for failure under the guise of an opportunity, like a lethal corporate hazing ritual.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, if we analyze this from a purely tactical standpoint, it seems like a massive waste of human capital.
Hey, totally.
Why would a military actively slaughter so many willing recruits before they even hand them a sword? How effective can a military actually be if it does that?
Well, see, the architecture of that cliff tells you everything about who is actually holding the power in Navarre. And it isn't the human generals.
Wait, it's not?
No.
Yeah.
The extreme social Darwinism at play on the parapet isn't a human mandate. It's an appeasement strategy for the dragons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, dragons are the apex predators here, and they possess literally zero tolerance for human fragility. Dragons refuse to bond with fragile humans. So if the college presented weak candidates, the dragons would simply incinerate them.
So the military leadership uses the parapet to pre-filter the recruits.
Exactly. So they don't insult the dragons with subpar offerings.
That makes the parapet essentially like a sacrificial altar disguised as an entrance exam.
That's a great way to put it.
And Violet knows her physical metrics do not align with what this altar demands. So she immediately starts playing a completely different game. I love that sequence before she even steps onto the bridge where she's observing the candidate in front of her. All right, Rhiannon. And Rhiannon is wearing smooth-soled boots. I mean, anyone knows smooth leather on wet stone is an absolute death sentence.
Oh, yeah? You're gone.
So what does Violet do? She quietly trades one of her own rubber grip boots for Rhiannon's smooth one.
And that moment is just a masterclass in game theory. Violet intentionally degrades her own physical advantage, her traction, to secure a social asset.
She needs an ally.
Exactly. She calculates that having a fiercely loyal ally inside a hostile environment is statistically more valuable to her long-term survival than having, perfect grip on her left foot.
She is forging an alliance before the war even starts.
Yeah, she's trading footwear for loyalty.
She's essentially building her own micro-network of support. And man, she needs it immediately because once she's on the bridge itself, brute strength literally comes for her.
Enter Jack Barlow.
Right, Jack Barlow, this ruthless recruit who actively tries to throw her off the bridge. He promises to kill her. And here's where the scribe training actually becomes a weapon.
Because she doesn't try to outmuscle him.
No. Instead of letting her autonomic nervous system take over, like panicking, adrenaline spiking, losing her balance, she uses these cognitive behavioral grounding techniques.
Which is so smart.
She just starts reciting obscure geographical history facts out loud. She's literally quoting border treaties to steady her pulse and regulate her heart rate.
She anchors her physiological response to her intellect. When Jack lunges for her, she doesn't try to match his kinetic energy at all.
She drops her center of gravity.
Right. She pulls a concealed dagger, and she targets his most vulnerable anatomy. She literally presses a dagger to his groin to force him to back down.
Yeah, it's so intense.
But it's not just the physical threat, right? She also weaponizes the Quadrant's own rulebook against him. She reminds him that causing harm while in formation is unlawful.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, she traps him in a paradox, like you can kill me and then be executed by the institution, or you can back down. She uses the bureaucracy of the military to neutralize a physical threat.
It's brilliant. She outthinks him. So she survives the human filter on the parapet. But as you mentioned earlier, surviving the humans is really just a warm-up. The true authorities at Basgiath aren't human at all.
No, they are definitely not.
The arrival of the dragons really shifts everything. We get to see this massive, terrifying navy blue dagger tail named Sorrengail. And Sorrengail just incinerates a fleeing cadet without a second thought on day one.
Just absolute raw power.
Yeah, and the power dynamic between the dragons and the Navarian military is where the world building gets incredibly complex.
Yeah.
Because it's a symbiotic relationship.
It is. The dragons channel magic into their riders, and that manifests as these unique signets.
Like Dane's ability to read recent memories.
Right. Or Xaden's ability to wield shadows.
But on a macro level, it's bigger than that. The combined force of the dragons actually powers the magical wards that protect all of Navarre from the enemy, right? The Griffin Riders of Port-Emil.
Exactly. That symbiotic loop is critical to understand. The dragons are these massive, localized generators of magical voltage. But raw voltage is chaotic.
Okay, so they need the humans.
Yeah, they need human riders to act as transformers, to like step that raw magical power down into something tactical, and then weave it into the sprawling, invisible defense grid that spans the kingdom's borders.
Okay, but I still have to question this power dynamic, because if I'm looking at creatures like Sorrengail, these sentient, overwhelmingly powerful nuclear reactors of magic, why tolerate the humans at all?
That's a valid question.
Right. Why tie your existence to a fragile, puny, two-legged creature that routinely falls off parapets? Why do they even need humans to weave wards or fight their wars?
Well, the sources actually drop some subtle, terrifying clues about exactly that, and Violet's analytical mind picks up on these anomalies that the brute force warriors just completely miss.
Because she's paying attention to the details.
Exactly. In her battle brief class, she runs a logistical analysis on a recent Griffin attack in the high-altitude Esben Mountains. She calculates the flight times, the troop deployments, and she realizes the math just doesn't add up.
How so?
The only way the Navarian riders could have responded to the attack in time and rushed to save that village is if they already knew the defensive wards in that sector were failing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So she catches the military in a cover-up.
She does. They are projecting absolute invulnerability to the public, but internally, they are scrambling. The wards are faltering.
And then you combine that with her other class, right? Professor Chiori's class.
Yes, the dragon biology class.
Yeah.
Violet absorbs this seemingly random piece of data.
Yeah.
2 years ago, 137 dragons were willing to bond with humans.
Okay.
But this year, the number dropped to exactly 100.
That's a huge drop.
It is. When you put those two data points together, the macro-level crisis becomes glaringly obvious. The dragons are silently pulling back. They are withdrawing their support.
It's like a massive energy crisis. The kingdom's magical defense grid is quietly collapsing because the power plants, the dragons, are opting out of the network.
Precisely.
Which completely shifts the context of everything happening at Basgiath. The leadership isn't just cruel, they are desperate.
And desperate leadership often resorts to draconian measures to maintain control. which segues perfectly into this socio-political powder keg operating at the micro level, down on the ground with the cadets.
You're talking about the marked ones.
Exactly, the marked ones.
So for you listening, the marked ones are these cadets who bear rebellion relics. They're these intricate, magical dragon marks.
They're highly visible.
Right. And these cadets are the children of the separatist leaders from the failed Tirish rebellion. Violet's own mother, General Sorrengail, actually executed the leaders of that rebellion, including the father of Xaden Riorson.
The great betrayer.
Right. As Xaden is now a highly powerful third-year wing leader. But the kingdom's solution to this rebellion was to forcibly conscript all the orphans of the executed rebels into the Riders' Quadrant.
It was intended as a systemic execution, a death sentence for their parents' treason. The Navarian leadership basically assumed the parapet and the dragons would do their dirty work for them.
Keep their hands clean.
Exactly. The logic was, just let the deadly architecture of the quadrant eliminate the rebel bloodline.
But looking at this from a strategic perspective, it seems like a catastrophic miscalculation.
Oh, it really is.
You take the orphan children of your greatest political enemies, subject them to incredible trauma, and then force them into the one military branch where they might actually bond with weapons of mass destruction.
It's wild.
Aren't you just arming people who have every reason to hate you? You are literally handing the launch codes to the people who have the most valid motive to burn your kingdom to the ground.
It relies entirely on the assumption that the system will kill them.
Right. And when the system fails to do that, you've just armed an insurgency inside your own walls.
Which is exactly what Xaden Riorson represents. He didn't just survive the meat grinder, he bonded with Scale, one of the most formidable dragons in existence.
And he became a wing leader.
Yeah, he ascended to the rank of wing leader. He leveraged the very system designed to execute him into a platform of absolute power. And it's a paradox, because outwardly, Xaden plays the role of the ruthless, compliant commander.
Well, like when he claims Violet is his to handle.
Right. When the other marked ones, like Imogen, who is a second year that actually breaks Violet's arm in sparring, when they want to target Violet as retribution for her mother's actions, Xaden steps in. He projects this aura of menace that satisfies the Navarian leadership's expectations of him.
But secretly, he's playing a completely different game.
A very dangerous double game. Violet actually overhears him breaking the quadrant's most strict law for marked ones.
The law against assembling in groups larger than 3.
Yes. Under the cover of night, he is gathering the younger marked cadets, but he isn't plotting an assassination or a coup in those meetings.
What is he doing?
He's simply teaching the first years how to survive hand-to-hand combat on the sparring mat.
Wow. So he was running like a shadow academy inside the official academy.
Navarre tried to use the quadrant to isolate and eliminate them, so Xaden is building a parallel institution based on mutual survival.
And that realization becomes this ideological turning point for Violet, with enemies like Jack snapping necks on the mat and marked ones like Imogen literally breaking her joints. She realizes she can't win by playing their game.
Her body just cannot take the punishment.
Right. She has to completely rewrite the rules of engagement. Which brings up this fascinating philosophical divergence between the two main men in her life, Dane and Xaden.
Dane being her childhood friend.
Yeah, Dane operates from this place of deep protective anxiety. Like when Violet's arm is broken, Dane immediately takes her to a rare mender named Nolan to fix the damage.
Right, a writer with a healing signet.
But Dane's ultimate solution is always retreat. He begs her to quit, to use her injury to run back to the scribe quadrant.
Dane views her physical frailty as an unchangeable fatal flaw. In his mind, the only way to survive a system you can't physically dominate is to escape it entirely.
It's the ultimate helicopter parent dynamic. The urge to protect her actually stifles her growth out of love.
Exactly, and you contrast that with Xaden's philosophy. It's brutally harsh on the surface, but deeply empowering in practice.
What's his rule during those secret combat sessions? I can't save someone who isn't willing to work to save themselves.
It's a philosophy of absolute accountability. He doesn't offer a backdoor exit, he demands that you evolve.
And Violet refuses to quit. She embraces that evolution, but she does it by turning back to her scribe roots.
This is where she weaponizes her knowledge.
Right, she doesn't suddenly become a master martial artist. She utilizes a secret journal left by her deceased brother Brennan. And despite her injury, she sneaks out at night, climbs an oak tree, and harvests these unripe finale berries.
Which is such a brilliant botanical hack.
It is. Her historical and botanical knowledge tells her that if you dry and powder unripe phenyly berries, you get this untraceable stealth poison that induces severe muscular weakness.
She engineers a localized paralytic.
Yes. So for her upcoming combat challenge against a larger, stronger cadet named Oren, she just slips this powder into his breakfast. She doesn't fight his muscles. She chemically unplugs them.
Why try to overpower a stronger opponent on the mat when you can alter their physiology before the match even begins?
Exactly. The institution demands brute strength, so she artificially lowers the strength of her opponent until it matches her own baseline.
She isn't merely surviving the system anymore, she's actively outthinking the institution.
And she gets caught, right? Xaden catches her in the shadows, harvesting those berries. She is cornered by the most lethal rider in the quadrant carrying contraband. But she stands her ground.
With flying daggers.
Yeah, she doesn't beg. And Xaden makes this fascinating calculation. He realizes she won't snitch on his secret meeting that she overheard.
He recognizes that she's utilizing the exact same strategy he is, projecting compliance while breaking the rules in the dark to ensure survival, so he lets her go.
He respects the intellect it takes to rewrite the rules.
He absolutely does.
So to summarize all of this for you listening, Violet's journey proves something incredibly vital. When you are thrust into a toxic environment that views your inherent traits as weaknesses, trying to assimilate is a trap.
The mechanism of survival is innovation, not assimilation.
Exactly. Whether you're facing information overload or a ruthless workplace, the best chance of survival is applying strategic intellect and forging smart alliances like Violet did with Rhiannon. That is your greatest weapon.
You have to identify the blind spots of the institution. The Navarian military valued raw strength so highly that they completely overlooked the lethal potential of a scribe's brain.
Which brings us to a lingering, deeply provocative thought for you to mull over. We've seen that the scribes claim their sacred duty is to record the present to save the future. They are the arbiters of historical truth.
Right.
But if the military is actively suppressing massive existential information, like the failing magical wards and the dying dragons, who is really controlling the narrative of Navarre?
If the military can cover up the collapse of its own defense grid, the integrity of the archives is inherently compromised.
If history is written by the victors, and the scribes operate under generals who let their own recruits die on a wet stone bridge just for an image of strength, what vital truths are being actively erased at Basgiath right now?
It really leaves you wondering how easily institutions can manipulate the truth.
It does. It shifts the focus from physical survival to informational survival. Navigating the quadrant is one thing, but figuring out the reality of the war you are being trained to fight is an entirely different battlefield. That's all for today's deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we'll catch you next time.